This video is to show you the logic that's required in order to solve the anion and cation information with Lab 7. So I'm going to be using this information here. It is not what is in your classroom, and if you use the answer generated from this video, you will not get credit because it will be wrong. So what I'm going to do in order to figure out what cation we're dealing with, because it's the cation solution we are testing, we're going to look at each row with the appropriate anions. So here, this says hydrofluoric acid. Well, hydrofluoric acid would be generated from a fluoride ion. So I'm looking in this row here, and we form a precipitate. So that means we either have magnesium, calcium, or lead. So now I'm going to go to the next anion here, the hydrochloric acid, or the anion generating solution hydrochloric acid, which is our next row. So here's chloride, which is generated from hydrochloric acid. Remember, hydrochloric acid is one of our strong acids. It completely dissociates. And we have soluble, we have insoluble with silver and with lead. Now, because the fluoride was insoluble and with silver it is soluble, we know we do not have silver. So from this, we're going to say we probably have lead, but we need to double check with the rest of our anions. So we have hydrobromic acid, which is the next anion in the or row in the table, and we're insoluble with silver and with lead. Now it says precipitate. I think that would generate a slightly soluble compound. So far, lead is what we have. Hydroiodic generates a insoluble compound, a precipitate. So far, so good. Hydroxide, sodium sulfate is here, and then sodium carbonate here. So lead is going to be our cation. So that would be Pb2+. Remember, a cation is an ion. We need a charge. So if we're going to look at this as for our anions, then remember these are separate solutions we are testing. The anion solution is what we're looking at now. So now we're going to look at our cation columns. Now for potassium nitrate, that the cation that we're testing here is potassium. So look down the potassium column, and the potassium column is here, and everything is soluble. So that is not a surprise. Then we're going to look at lithium. So lithium produced a precipitate. So I guess it could be fluoride, but it's probably going to be phosphate. So let's look again at calcium. So calcium formed a precipitate. I'm going to look in the calcium row, which is right here. And in that calcium row, that could be fluoride, or because we have already ruled out that we don't have any of these, it could be phosphate. So let's keep looking. Copper forms a precipitate as well. Well, copper is soluble here, so we know we do not have fluoride, and we very likely have phosphate. Now I'm going to look at silver. Silver forms a precipitate. Here we are. And, oh, that's not lead. And lead. And the last one is aluminum nitrate, which will not form a precipitate, so I ought to change that. It's not going to form a precipitate with anything. So that is the logic to be used, because this showed that we had phosphate. That's the logic to be used to determine which cation and which anion you have.